Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to class. Today is going to be a very interesting topic because we are now in our, should I call it our second half of this whole session or psychology class, okay? Because as I told you before in our last video that the series that I thought previously were foundational series or psychological foundational knowledge, and we're going deep into the psychology knowledge very soon. I think that was, if you watched 5 reasons why we study psychology, that was the last video for that particular foundational series. Okay, so now we are in the advanced series, and that's how we'll be going on from now. All right, so welcome to this wonderful episode or class. Before we go any further into this class, I need you to think about something, which is, how many times have you seen someone post online something like a study shows that, or psychology says that, and you believed it? You might have even shared it, and then weeks later you found out that it was completely made up, it was misquoted, and or it was taken out of context. So that happens because most people have never been taught how psychology actually generates knowledge, and that changes today in my class. Welcome to this week's series, Research Methods in Psychology, or we can still call it the scientific method. I am Viola, as you already know, and this is episode 11, or another class as we call it. Alright, so the first thing I need you to understand is this: science is not a place, okay? It is not a white lab coat, it is not a beaker and all those things you think science is all about. Science is a method, it's a way of thinking and investigating. So let me give you a textbook definition of that. So what's the textbook definition of science? Science is the pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the natural and social world, following a systematic methodology based on evidence. Now, that was a very massive definition. So let's break it down to what it actually means. Because 3 words here are actually doing a lot of work. 3 main words are doing a lot of work in this definition. And number 1 is systematic. What does it mean to be systematic? What does it mean if something is systematic? This means that there is an organized, structured process. You're not making it up as you go, okay? Also, we see predefined steps in the textbook definition I just talked about, and this means that those steps, whatever steps that you're taking in your scientific study, follows a specific sequence, and if you disrupt that sequence, you corrupt the entire investigation, okay? Other matters. So that's the reason why when I was talking about the 4 goals of psychology, I was like, do not mix it up, do not mix it. See that it's a step-by-step thing, it's a sequence. First of all, you describe, second you explain, third you predict, fourth you control. You see, you're not skip describe and then go to predict, right? Order really matters, okay? So another word that is really important in this definition is objective. This means the researcher's personal feelings, opinions, and biases must not be allowed to interfere with what the data is showing, okay? Evidence rules in science. Always, not personal preference, all right? So that is what makes psychology a science, not the topic. The method psychology uses makes it a science. All right, so now the textbook gave us 4 pillars that hold scientific method together, right? Every legitimate psychological study must stand on all these four pillars. Pillar 1 is replication. So a good study must be repeatable. Okay. For example, if I conduct a study and find that children who sleep less perform worse in school, that's a study I conducted, right? And that was my result from that study. It was positive. My hypothesis said children who sleep less perform worse in school. I tested my study and it was positive. Another researcher in a different country should be able to run this same study, right? Okay, and get a similar result. So if they get a completely different result every single time, the original finding is questionable. Alright, so science is not a one-time magic trick. Okay, so pillar 2 is empirism. This one is huge. Empirism means knowledge must come from observation and evidence, not from tradition, not from authority, not from what your grandmother told you, okay? Not from what feels right, not from any kind of opinion. If you cannot observe it, you cannot test it and measure it, it does not count as scientific evidence. So this is exactly why psychology separated itself from philosophy centuries ago. And I'm very sure you'll be wondering, how does psychology and philosophy have a relationship? We are going to talk about the history of psychology very soon, and it's going to be a big, beautiful, amazing class. I really hope you'll be there to watch it. That will be in later phases. Okay, so this is the reason why psychology separated itself from philosophy years ago. Okay, so the pillar 3 is objectivity, which I have mentioned over and over again. I'm sure by now it's already stuck in your head. Alright, this means that personal bias must be removed from the process. For example, a researcher who wants a certain result, there's a result you are expecting from this study. Okay, this researcher will consciously or unconsciously design a study that produces that result. So now your personal bias has interfered with the study because you're not going to be objective enough to do things, to test this study, to observe it critically and objectively, and you're not going to take steps that will make sure that this study gives you the result that it's supposed to give you. You might unconsciously or consciously do things that would make this study produce the result you are expecting. All right, so that is why psychology uses blind studies. Okay, blind studies. It also uses control groups and peer review. All right, I'm sure you already know what I mean by those kind of things. If you don't, we're still going to learn about it, do not worry. The goal of all this is to find the truth, the objective truth. Okay, not to confirm what you already believe, right? So you can see that even these 4 pillars that I'm talking about right now, we're in the 3rd pillar, right, which is objectivity. These 4 pillars we're talking about right now, you can use it in your personal life, right? You can apply this in your personal life for any kind of thing you are consuming, any kind of knowledge you are consuming, every kind of truth you want to believe, every kind of truth you'd like to buy. You can use these 4 pillars to shift, or should I say to sift, yes, things till they become the real thing, the truth. All right, so this takes us to pillar 4, and which is tentative findings. This is the one most people get wrong about science. People say, but scientists keep changing their minds. How can we trust them? That is actually a sign that science is working. Okay, scientific conclusions are never permanent. When a new evidence emerges, findings must be updated. A scientist who refuses to update their view in the face of new evidence is not being strong. They are being unscientific. unscientific. And this can also apply to you too. If you find out something new about yourself, about someone, about maybe anything, maybe a belief, a culture, something new that seems to beat that old belief, that seems to beat that old thought you had about something, please update it. Update your knowledge, whatever it is. Update it, okay? You cannot be holding on to something when you know very well that there is evidence, there is proof that this thing you're holding on to is not credible. Okay, so remember this, right? The day science stops being tentative is the day it becomes religion. And when I say religion, it's not in the sense of Christianity, Buddhism, and all the rest. I'm not talking about that. Religion in this sense and in this definition means routine, something that is done every time in a particular way, in a set way. That is religion, okay? So let's remember that. All right. So why does this matter to you personally? Let me be very direct. We live in a world that is drowning in false research claims, right? We see social media posts that say scientists discovered, okay, all right, news headlines that misquote studies, product advertised with clinically proven labels that no one has ever verified. The scientific method is your filter, as I have already said previously. Okay? So a claim that has not been replicated, which means if you've heard a claim and you've seen that, I don't know, it has been tested by different people and it's not giving similar results, a claim that is not replicated is just an interesting finding. It's not a fact. Okay, it's not. Also, a claim that is not backed up by empirical observation is just an opinion, even if the person saying it has a PhD. Okay, take that as a very important thing. Also, a claim that comes from a biased study where the researcher has something to gain from a particular result is not science. All right, it is marketing dressed up in a lab coat. So the American Psychological Association, known as the APA for short, sets the standards for what counts as legitimate psychological research, and every standard they set comes back to these same 4 pillars. Okay, so even the APA themselves use the 4 pillars I just mentioned to you to test their standards, to make sure that these standards are scientific enough, they are tested enough to be used. All right, okay, so when you understand this method, you become harder to fool. That's it. Look at the methods very well. You can use them in your life. Look at it. You can apply them. Okay. So, and in 2026, okay, this is one of the most genuine, valuable things that psychology can give you. All right. So let us bring it to home with 3 things I want you to walk away remembering. 1, the scientific method is not about being in a laboratory. It's about how you think and investigate. Remember that, how you think and investigate. You can apply this method to your own life, to your decisions, your assumptions, and your beliefs about people. Number 2, psychology earns its title as a science because it follows this method: systematic, empirical, objective, tentative. If a psychological claim does not meet these criteria, be suspicious. All right. Number 3, every research study we cover in this entire series that we are starting, all right, comes from observation to experimental to surveys, was built on this exact foundation. All right, so everything we are going to talk about, which is which is what I have mentioned of experimentation, surveys, interviews, whatever it is we're going to talk about in this series, or should I call it in this episode of research psychology, is going to be built on this exact foundation. So everything we are going to talk about would connect back to this episode. So please put this episode in mind. All right. Okay. So in the next class, we are going deeper. As I said, we are going to go through the 6 specific things or 6 specific steps of psychological research, from identifying a problem all the way to drawing conclusions, step by step. No jargon, just clarity. See you in the next class. Bye.